Well, Alexander Dalla, let's look at the logistics, because the point was made a few times in that film. A commercial flight from London to Australia is around 23 hours. Time zones-wise, Canberra is 9 hours ahead of London. I mean, when it comes to the free movement of goods and people, it is just a lot easier, isn't it, to do it with your neighbours who are geographically closer?
Well, it's not really a principle of economics that we apply. We look for markets where we can sell, and some of them are proximate and some of them aren't. So the nearest country to Australia is Papua New Guinea. So it goes without saying that's not one of our major trading partners. The next nearest is Indonesia, and that was 11th, our 12th largest trading partner. Our biggest trading partners are actually a long way away. They're China, they're Korea, they're Japan, they're the United States.
But isn't that really a symptom of where you are, Australia, whereas we have, obviously, the continent of Europe right on our doorstep?
Well, it's not, in other words, a principle that we trade just with countries that are near to us. And that principle is wrong. It's where you have a comparative advantage that you trade. So, I mean, we used to have a huge amount of agricultural trade with the UK, and the distance was exactly the same then as as it is now. A huge amount of agricultural trade that was cut out when Britain joined the European Union. So it proves the point that if we had free trade again with the UK, I don't know what we would export, it's hard to predict, but Australian exporters would be interested in the British market. But more than that, Australian importers would be interested in the UK, because it's a place you could get things of high quality at a good price.
But are we right to look at Australia and New Zealand and, you know, other countries outside the EU as this sort of great utopia, if you like, outside of the EU? When you look, UK exports to Australia last year were worth around £9 billion. UK exports to the EU last year were around £241 billion. Even taking your point that we're not going to stop trading with the EU, there would have to be an awful lot of trade done with those other countries to justify, if you like, in the words of the government, that it's worthwhile.
I think, number one, as an outsider, so it might be a bit presumptuous of me to say this, but it seems to make perfect sense for you to retain some kind of free trade arrangement with the EU. But number two, just to sort of make a mathematical point, if 60% of your trade is with the outside world, 60% of your trade is not with the EU, then it does make sense to liberalise as much of that 60% as you can, as well as maintaining liberal trade with the other 40%. Now, that is a win-win for the UK if you can achieve that.